Thanks, Senator Cotton. Senator Tillis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Secretary Kendall, I hadn't expected to ask this question, but based on the exchange with Senator Warren, I think it may be helpful, and it may be necessary to do in a classified briefing, but it would be helpful with the F-22 and the F-35 to talk about some of the kinks that we're working out, technical kinks, and separate those from modifications that we're making specifically because we've identified new threats. We got a briefing a week or so ago, but I think that would be helpful. I, for one, think one of the reasons why the acquisition process is so difficult is we have a near perfection requirement for specifications before we move forward. And if we don't understand with some of these platforms, some of the more technically challenging ones, I can understand where you want to do a lot of homework, but in some respects, we've got to be able to accept failure if we're going to actually learn from failure. And I use SpaceX as a classic example of that. One of the reasons why they've got such a successful program now is they were prepared to go on TV and have what I think Elon Musk referred to as a rapid, unplanned disassembly. So I think we need to have it. We can't, on the one hand, say you've got to compress the time to value, and then on the other hand, say in every case it has to be perfect. So I think maybe for a future hearing we should talk about that. You know, I've got a little bit of a history of bringing up the KC-10 and the KC-46. We're going to be happy to host down at Seymour Johnson. But I was curious with the current conflict in Ukraine, the increase in refueling needs, and then gaming out how this conflict could go, if there's any thought process in the Air Force behind whether or not we are retiring KC-10s a little bit faster than we should based on threats that we didn't know about before February the 24th, or didn't necessarily anticipate.
Yeah, Senator, I'm not aware of any impact that would coming out of the Ukraine lessons learned that would affect that. But General Brown may want to comment.
And if you could also just give me an update on KC-46 and some of the technical challenges that we're working through.
Sure.
General Brown.
Nothing in a threat that actually would change where we are with the KC-46. And what I would also tell you that we did send KC-46 to Europe for about 5 weeks to have a chance to work and support some of those operations and even air refuel from our NATO partners. The airplane performed very well. I think I learned a lot while we were there about how to work in a deployed environment. As far as the KC-46, one of the key areas that we've been working on it was the remote visual system. We've come to agreement with Boeing on that, and we'll start that process here in about a year or so to start the conversion. But as I've had a chance to, I've personally flown the airplane and flown on the airplane and had a chance to talk to the airmen and operate it. They are very pleased with the airplane, and what we're finding is we go through and certify different airplanes. We're about 8 airplanes away from most of all the fleets that we would actually be able to air refuel. And so again, the airplane's going well. It does have some issues we're working through, but by and large, it's meeting some of the requirements, and we'll continue to work that with the other platforms we have with the KC-10 and KC-135.
Okay, General Brown, maybe sticking with you, I know that you're cutting the active duty in strength, and my understanding is some of that is primarily due to budget constraints. So if you didn't have the budget constraint, would you be able to use those personnel?
Well, all the personnel that we're taking out of the active duty in strength, and the Guard and Reserve, we're coming down in the active, a little bit up in the Guard and down a little bit in the Reserve. All that is tied to force structure. So it's not arbitrary, just taking airmen out. It's tied to actual capability. Okay,
so then it really wasn't budgetary driver for the force reduction?
No, it wasn't.
Okay. General Raymond, Senator Cotton mentioned some of the classification and declassification. I believe we were supposed to get a report due out at the end of March. We haven't gotten that. Do we have any idea when we should expect to see that report?
I know OSD policy, specifically the new ASD, is working that, and he's doing the work. I don't have an estimate on when I'll get it back.
Okay, if you could report back and give us an expected due date, I'd be interested in hearing that. I guess the final question, I got a briefing before a personnel subcommittee. All of our service lines have some headwinds on recruiting. Air Force, Space Force seems to be maybe not as challenged as the Army. How are we doing on recruiting? What more do we need to do as a matter of authorities or resources to make sure you can hit your recruiting goals?
We do have issues on recruiting, but we think we'll be close to or meet our goals this year. Looking forward, though, we're using up some of our delayed entrants in order to make that goal. So there are some headwinds, the economy and the demand for labor, a few other things that are impacting recruiting. So we're addressing this at the department level, Department of Defense, as well as Department of the Air Force. We have a number of things such as bonuses that we're offering now, increased advertising and so on, outreach to places we haven't been able to go. Under COVID, our recruiters couldn't get into schools for a long time, so that's been a big setback. And that's corrected now, so in general. So we're doing a lot of things. I'm not aware of anything that we need from the committee or from the Congress at this time, though.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tillis.